So you're thinking about buying a CNC. You've consumed all the content, you watched all the videos, you know exactly what it can do, what it can cut, and what you can make with it. But you're still a little hesitant. And I don't blame you. It's a big purchase. You should be a little hesitant. And I've seen so many people jump into buying their first CNC and it absolutely flops. For me, personally, I own 5 CNCs, 2 lasers, and they're valued at over $500,000. And I mentor a lot of people on what CNCs they should buy and things they should be looking at. So these are my 5 tips on what you need to be thinking about before purchasing that first CNC. And since a CNC is such a big purchase, if you're still on the edge after these 5 points, at the end of the video, I will give one other alternative that I would pursue instead of jumping the gun and making that cash investment to purchasing your first CNC. So the first thing you need to realize is that it's just another tool. And if you don't know what you're gonna make with it and what you're gonna produce, it's just gonna sit there and collect dust. I mean, it'd be the same if I went and got a planer and had no wood to plane with it, right? Like, don't think you're gonna buy one and then automatically think of stuff to make with it, right? Like, you've watched enough videos. If you don't have a good idea of what you're gonna make with it and what you're gonna produce with it and how you're gonna recoup the cost of that purchase, then don't go buy one yet. It's okay. It's literally costing you nothing not to buy it. Now, if you have a really good set of plans or a product that you wanna make with it, go right ahead. I mean, it might be a good idea to buy one, but if you don't know what you're gonna make with it, it's just another useless tool that's gonna sit in your garage or sit in your shop and collect dust. That's the very first fallacy that I see all CNC guys make, that they think it's this end-all be-all tool, when really it's just another tool in your wood shop. And don't think just because you get it, you're gonna all of a sudden become creative and know exactly what to make with it. And that leads us to the second point I'd like to talk about, and that's the overall mentality surrounding CNCs. So if you think by this purchase, you're gonna be on the cutting edge of technology, and just because of this tool, you're gonna be leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else, I would tell you you're probably 20 to 40 years too late. So back in the 80s, there was CNC technology around. It was just extremely expensive and really hard to get into, so not a lot of people had them. So if you had one back in the day, in the 80s, the 90s, you were on the cutting edge of technology. You did have something that nobody else had. But nowadays, quite frankly, I can go on Amazon and look at 10 to 20 different CNCs for all under $2,000. And that's my big worry, is right now, I think CNCs are almost becoming a fad, kind of like the Glowforge or the Cricut. So people think just because they have one, they're gonna be able to start a business and be way ahead of the game. When the reality of it is, they've been around for a long time. People have already mastered it. So if you're just now getting in the game, you're not too late. Don't get me wrong, you're not too late. Think of it like my first point, it's just a tool. So make sure you have a game plan around that CNC before you make the purchase, because you're just one of thousands and thousands and thousands of people now that have a CNC. It's becoming less of a specialized tool and more of a common tool in most wood shops. Some old-time woodworkers absolutely hate that, but you have to adjust with the times, and people are starting to buy them and use them in their everyday repertoire of tools because it is so easily accessible. So the next thing a lot of people overlook is that they put a CNC router in the same category as a laser and a 3D printer because they're all computer controlled, right? That can't be farther from the truth. Even though the CNC is computer controlled, you have to have different things for that. With a 3D printer, you just have to have some filament, right? And you can print stuff. With a laser, you can just set it in your bedroom or on the kitchen table, it'll laser engrave and you're perfectly fine. With the CNC, you have to have so many more tools. You have to know the bits, what kind of bits to use. You have to have dust collection, because dust is gonna get everywhere. Even if you're cutting like plastics, you're gonna have that smell, those fumes. And so you're gonna have to have some kind of dust or fume extraction for that CNC. You're probably gonna have to have additional tools because it doesn't make this completely smooth cut every time. Where these other two machines, a lot of times you're just buying stuff and just clicking go. So just know the CNC isn't like those other tools. You're gonna have a lot more space. You're probably gonna have a dedicated area like a garage or like an outside shed to house all this stuff in. If not, your significant other's gonna get really mad because there's gonna be dust everywhere in the house. So don't go that direction. You're gonna have to have different power supply. You're gonna have to have a lot more equipment. So like, let's say your CNC costs $2,000. You're probably gonna have $500 of equipment just to run that CNC, where there's other machines you don't really need much extra. So that's another common misconception that I see that CNC beginners make, is they don't understand all the other costs that's associated with purchasing that one CNC. And that's gonna lead me into the fourth thing I'd like to talk about, and that is the programming aspect of a CNC. So what do I mean by programming? Now, you've probably watched the CNC videos, so you know you have to be able to code and run that software. But a lot of things people overlook is there's not a one-size-fits-all software. Sometimes you can buy a machine and it has to get ran by a certain software. A real life example that happened to me just last year. I bought a $300,000 CNC, and my computer programs that I was currently running my 4 other CNCs on no longer worked for that massive CNC. So $15,000 later, I could finally run that $300,000 CNC. And I've been in the game for 10 years and had no earthly idea that my software couldn't run that machine that I got. So just beware of that, because there is certain softwares that have to run certain machines. There may be small machines out there that are really cheap, but you have to be on a subscription to this software or pay $500 for this certain software, right? There is really good free softwares out there. I've never personally used them. I have heard other people using them. I've always used VCarve Pro and Aspire, but I've always been a Vectric guy. They don't sponsor me or anything like that, but they are a great company. I've used them. I've used them on all my CNCs, except my big one. So if you haven't considered what software you need or what you can buy, I'll go out there and do some research, see what software your CNC is compatible with, and actually price it out, because it could increase the overall budget by 25, 30, 40% of your overall CNC purchase, because you have to have that specific software to run your machine, and a lot of times people overlook that. Overall, you're gonna have to program it. It's not that easy to program CNCs, and the software to find is sometimes relatively expensive to power your CNC in the first place. So that's just another thing to consider before making and jumping the gun into that purchase. Now let's go into the 5th and final things that people overlook when making their first CNC purchase. So the last thing you need to grasp is what CNC is right for you, and I've seen it on both ends of the spectrum. So on the big end, I've seen people spend $50,000 on their first CNC just to mess it up, just to break parts and break bits and go into their spoil board and not have the right program and really screw it up. Ends up costing them $5,000 to $10,000 in repairs just to do that. And then they get sleepless nights because they have to recoup all those costs, and then they're worried, then they end up selling the CNC. They just completely get demoralized and just go out of business, right? They don't care for it anymore because they had such a shock because it failed so bad. Because the learning curve on a CNC does take months and months and months. Now, I've also seen it on the lower end of the spectrum. People try to get the cheapest, most budget-friendly CNC they can get. They try to cut parts out with it, and it's not rigid enough, and the spindle can't handle it, and so you can't do anything with the CNC. So you just wasted your money because you try to get the most budget-friendly one. And me, for example, my first CNC cost me $6,000, but I needed a 3 horsepower spindle to be able to do what I needed to do with it, and I needed it rigid enough to be able to cut out parts. So I had to shell out $6,000 for my first CNC, but it worked great. Now, did I still make those mistakes and break those bits? And did I do that on every CNC purchase since then because I'm learning how to operate that particular machine? Absolutely yes. But if I would have started off with like a $50,000 CNC when I didn't really need it, I would have probably spent over $6,000 in just repairs, which would have paid for the smaller CNC that I eventually got in the first place. So make sure that your CNC is right for you and what you are going to do with it. You may need a water-cooled spindle because you're gonna be cutting out parts all day. You may just need a little handheld router because you're only doing engravings on it. Make it fit your needs and understand the rigidity and the spindle size of your machines, because I would say those two things, along with what software is gonna run it, is probably the most important things to consider when looking at which machine you're gonna purchase. And because I'm not really a nerd or an engineer, one of the things I like to consider for me is the customer service behind it, because I'm not that smart, so I'm on the phone a lot asking a lot of questions, and they're walking me through like how to run it and how to troubleshoot. And that's another thing that I think people gloss over, is the back-end support of whatever software or CNC machine you get. Now, if you're still on the fence after those 5 points, what I would do is just contract it out. Don't buy the first CNC, don't make that first purchase, and let somebody else that already has a CNC, knows how to program it, let them make your parts for you. Just outsource it. Go to a Facebook page. There's lots of them out there that have thousands of CNC users on it that may have not watched this video, bought the CNC, now it's just sitting in their garage collecting dust. You can get those guys to make that, and in return, if you sell that product, you know you have a good product fit, and now you can comfortably go out there, buy your CNC, you know the product's gonna sell, and pay for that big purchase. On the other hand, you can get them to make it. Let's say you don't sell a single one of those products. You just saved yourself thousands and thousands of dollars that you would have spent buying that CNC and learning the hard way because you outsourced it. It may be a little more expensive than maybe what you want, but I promise you it's gonna save you so much time and a sense of security because you know that product's gonna sell, or you know it absolutely flopped, and you can save yourself thousands of dollars. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you left this video with more knowledge than when you started. We just hit a huge milestone for the channel. We just hit 50,000 subscribers, and we're trying to hit 100,000 by December 31st, 2023. So if you haven't already liked and subscribed, please do. If you know somebody that would enjoy this channel, enjoy the value that we're trying to put out, please share this channel with them because we think this channel is gonna help a lot of people grow their woodworking business business or whatever business they're in. So guys, thank you so much. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, if you ain't cutting it close, you ain't cutting it right. Boom! If you ain't cutting it close, you ain't cutting it right.
That one was cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Like a whole mushroom cloud. It's like atomic nuclear bomb.
Yeah, the lips really.